China hosting today a summit of Arab leaders focused on what's happening in Gaza. At the opening of the event today, the Chinese President Xi Jinping calling for the establishment of a Palestinian state and announcing more aid for the Gaza Strip.
War should not continue indefinitely. Justice should not be absent forever. Commitment to the two-state solution should not waver. China firmly supports the establishment of an independent state of Palestine that enjoys full sovereignty based on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. It supports Palestine's full membership in the United Nations and supports a more broad-based, authoritative and effective international peace conference.
Well, listening to the Chinese leader there was James Dorsey. He joins us on the programme now. He's a senior fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies in Singapore. Hello to you, sir. Thanks very much for finding the time to talk to us on the programme.
Pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.
First of all, can you just tell us how you think China views the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza?
China's been supportive of a ceasefire ever since the war broke out. In the process and so what Xi Jinping today said at the meeting in Beijing is not new. That has been the Chinese position. What it means, however, is that China's claim, as it did in the past, that it had good relations with all parties no longer is valid. China's relations with Israel have deteriorated significantly because of the Chinese position with regard to the Gaza war. Now, having said that, China has also seen the Gaza war as an opportunity to position or improve China's standing in the Middle East, particularly in the non-Israeli Middle East, and to position itself, even though that is highly unlikely, as an arbitrator.
That's interesting. You talked about the idea that Israel and China have worsened their diplomatic ties since the outbreak of this war and the kind of language that President Xi has used. What I'm interested in, though, is does China have influence over the Palestinian side of this, if not the Israelis, figures like those in the Palestinian Authority, those in Hamas?
Well, I think it has moral influence. Fact of the matter is that China does not have the kind of political influence. It has economic influence, but the kind of political influence that would allow it to be a mediator. China has China's track record in Middle East mediation is not an overall successful track record. Sure, it succeeded last year in helping Saudi Arabia and Iran reestablish diplomatic relations. But keep in mind that the process leading up to those diplomatic relations took 2 years, and China was not involved in that. The mediators were countries like Iraq and Oman. And if you look at the current diplomatic efforts, everybody agrees that the one party that can help bring this war to an end is the United States. It's not China.
China, though, clearly still trying to exert influence, show it has a diplomatic role to play. We just saw in the footage there Xi Jinping meeting the Egyptian president. Speak to us a bit more broadly about why the Chinese leader has invited these Arab leaders to Beijing. Is there an economic part of the puzzle here as well? We know, of course, China's long imported oil from big Middle Eastern players in the Gulf, and they're attending as well.
Well, the economic bit of this is extremely important because at the end of the day, China's relations with the Middle East are primarily economic. And China does not have an appetite to replace the United States as the major power in the region. It emphasizes its economic relations. the other question, of course, is whether it has the military capability to ensure security in the Middle East. I think what you're seeing in terms of the positioning of China as a political power, that really is about China's image, China's relationships, and Chinese soft power, rather than really wanting China to play a role. If you go back a couple of years, China laid out several principles which it would want to see met if it were to get involved in the Middle East. And one of those principles was that you have to manage your own conflicts. You may not be able to resolve them, but call us when you have a mechanism to manage your conflicts and disputes. Clearly, the Middle East does not have that mechanism.
James Dorsey talking to us live in Singapore. Good to speak to you, sir. Thanks very much.
Thank you for having me.